Okay. Fellow Toastmaster, honored Encompass guest. The title of my speech is Laying the Foundation. In this speech, I want to talk about a few of the projects in this pathway, teamwork, collaboration. I want to describe some of my research. And foremost, I want to give you a sense of the value of this project for me. What have I learned? And the focus has been on reconciling my family history, my personal story, with in the broader context of Western imperialism, the colonial expansion into the prairies, which displaced the First Nations. I want to be proud of my story, but I also want to understand what happened. So the first thing I will address is the projects. And I've given one of these already. It's called the Journey Map, and it details the emigration of my great-grandparents, Jacob and Katharina Rempel, from southern Ukraine to Roster in Saskatchewan in 1902. I have a second presentation ready to go called People of the Buffalo, and this outlines the fate of the First Nations in that area who were displaced by the settlers coming into the prairies, and the focus there is on Treaty 6. The third presentation I'm working on compares and contrasts the relationship to the land of the Indigenous people and my Mennonite forebears. I'm calling this one Holy Ground. The First Nations didn't have a sense of personal land ownership. The land, a general territory, belonged to the tribe, which was used for their hunting and gathering and their fishing, but no individual plot of land. They ranged over their territory. Whereas my ancestors received their homestead patents on the basis of how much land they put into production. They were expected to stay there and erect buildings and to receive their land titles. You can see what a difference there was in worldviews, and I'll get back to that later. Now onto my research. This has been extensive. I have a vast wealth of letters and stories that have been shared with me by my mother's cousin, Roberta Rivet, who's the family historian and genealogy on my mother's side. Then I have conversations that I've had with lots of family members, and also some interaction with the Borden and District Museum, which was that area close to Roster, which has some of my family records. For the First Nations story that I've been learning about, it's all online, but so much available. The University of Saskatchewan has an Indigenous Peoples Encyclopedia. The University of Regina has archives containing stories that were collected by an anthropologist back as far as 1935 from elders. There are stories referring to hunting the buffalo, like personal remembrances of that. This is very interesting for me, and there's transcripts of the treaties that were signed, plus so much historical background. Now, what am I hoping to accomplish through this research and through these projects? I alluded to it at the beginning of the disconnect between the two stories. The story of my family settling, and then the story of but at the expense of the First Nations, who were basically removed from their land. And now, in the 150 years that have passed, is a lot of history. At one point, it seemed that the First Nations were extinguished, exterminated. There was going to be no more Indian problem, as it was termed by the federal government. But now they've managed to adapt and survive, and they're actively working towards regaining those rights, the treaty rights, the self-government, and the ownership of the lands to which they were entitled, all the privileges to which the treaties guaranteed them. And then in our society, the Western society as such, there's been a movement towards decolonization. The idea that we need to exchange our Western worldview based on this hierarchical power structure, which imposes values and culture on successively more subservient levels, starting from God and going to the white male and then down that way. The worldview that my grandparents subscribed to, it's becoming more and more recognized. This worldview needs to be replaced. So this is a sort of a reversal in some way. This worldview needs to be replaced by the First Nations circle of life, which places the Creator at the center of an interrelational web of balance and harmony. So we're understanding our relationship with each other and with the earth, and ideas about government in a different, in a more holistic sense. And this is just starting out. It's becoming more and more prevalent, and I'm learning to understand. I've learned a lot about it through my work, through my project, and I'm expecting that this will build a foundation for my own understanding and appreciation of the role of First Nations in Canada today. And I'm excited to share this with you because I think this might be useful for all of us who have this settler background and come to Canada from other places.